Welcome to RIoT's Startup Spotlight, where we shine a light on the visionaries and disruptors who are shaping the future. I'm Jen Morgan, and today we bring you an exclusive interview with Steve Waddell, President and CEO of Nasoni.
Good morning, Jen.
Good morning, Steve. To begin, can you tell us a little bit about your company?
Absolutely. So Nasoni was born out of my own personal frustration a number of years ago. You watch Shark Tank and you get inspired. My background is 25 years building nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and submarines at Newport News Shipbuilding, followed by 11 at my wife's company, RIoT Integration. But along the way, like I said, you get inspired by Shark Tank, and I decided to reinvent the bathroom faucet, literally, to incorporate a water fountain feature to make rinsing after brushing easier. There's a lot of reasons, though, why we had a shift, and I guess we'll talk about that as the interview goes on.
Well, you talked a little bit about your previous experiences and your previous role, but can you dive a little bit more into that and how that got you here?
Yeah, sure. So in Newport News Shipbuilding, I worked 7 years on the waterfront as an apprentice and a foreman, then spent 12 years in engineering. And when I was in engineering, I did things like I was a refueling engineer. I had reactor plant 2A for refueling the USS Enterprise. I spent time writing the risk management process for the aircraft carrier program that Defense System Management College recognized as the industry best practice. And in fact, my phone number in the yard was 8-RISK internally, so people could reach me. And then I spent 6 years in IT as an IT project manager for multi-million-dollar IT projects. But my wife and I, my wife started a company called RIoT Integration. It's a government consulting business and training. And I left the yard in 2007 and joined as her vice president. I helped her grow that to a multi-million-dollar government consulting business that has been on the Inc. 500, 5,000 numerous times. In fact, she just won it again this past year. So things are going great for her company right now, and I'm very proud of what she's done. But again, along the way, you get inspired by watching Shark Tank, and you think, I can solve my own problem and create a product that people in the world would love. And so that's kind of how I got where I am. But in the yard, I was a process improvement expert. I did a lot of that in the yard. I could see things because of my experience working with my hands on the waterfront and then in engineering, kind of different than people that came straight out of college and went into engineering. So, that started me down this path of product and process improvement.
I think it's really interesting, you talked about how your experience in the yard kind of got you to this new process improvement side of things. Can you dive a little bit more into what you are actually improving and what that looks like for your company?
Yeah, it's really a kind of a fantastic story. Personally, again, my background, had me believe that I could make things better. And the process when you rinse after you brush your teeth, you either have to tilt your head, cup your hand, or use a cup. And so I decided I would find a way to solve that. And I saw these Nasoni fountains of Rome. And they're basically street fountains that were installed in 1872. Water flowed from the Apennine Mountains down through the Roman aqueducts and up through these street fountains, down through a little tube. And when you plugged the bottom, it popped out the top like a water fountain. And when I saw that, I said, why isn't that in the bathroom? So as you can see here, this is, and I'll move the book, this is one of my Nasoni fountain faucets. Now that's a hardware product. Now, I did that as a startup and raised over $80,000 in startup competitions. And that allowed me to get to an MVP. And the MVP was picked up by an investor called the Otten Associates in Minnesota, where they invested $600,000 in the company. The problem is we launched at the worst possible time. First thing that hit us, and I call them Krakens, in my TED talk. I gave a TEDx talk at TEDx Warrenton last month, and it's already over 120,000 views and 5,000 likes. It's doing very well. But in that, I talk about the challenges entrepreneurs face, and I liken those to Krakens. So my first Kraken was a patent issue where we filed a patent too soon. And, I learned that there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. But the next thing we hit with was when our faucets were being shipped to the US, we got hit with a 25% China tariff. That tariff cost us $50,000, which is the equivalent of many startups' entire seed round. So that was our entire marketing budget. The next thing that hit us was, we thought we'd go to trade shows and things like that, but When COVID hit, all the trade shows were canceled. People didn't worry about bathroom faucets. They were all fighting over toilet paper. So, so we had to shift. We had to shift what we were doing. And what happened was I was introduced to Dr. Lisa Caperna. Lisa's the clinical director at Old Dominion University Monarch Physical Therapy. And she saw our fountain faucet and said, oh my gosh, if we had a sensor version of that, we could help spinal cord injured patients live more independently. Now, my wife had said, I ought to think about a grant. And I thought, what am I going to do with a grant and a faucet? But when I heard that from Lisa, there's the grant opportunity. So I went and found the best grant writer I could. I used $10,000 out of the PPP loan to help hire that grant writer because phase one grants have a 13% win rate. We won that grant and knocked it out of the park. The clinical trials went fantastic. We won a phase two for over 2 million last year. And then, also along the way last year, I got to thinking about my mother-in-law who helped her husband rather, as he declined with dementia over a 3-year period. They fell in the shower. And I thought, maybe we can also make the faucet better suited to offload shower functions to the bathroom sink, like hair washing. So I thought about that, and I went and found the head gerontologist in the area, Dr. Hamid Okravi at Eastern Virginia Medical School. Told him what I wanted to do, and he goes, we also have a problem with medication management. I have to call my patients every morning and every night to remind them to take their meds. So I applied for a grant with the National Institute of Aging, a direct to phase 2 SBIR. We won that in August for 2.58 million. So the bottom line is we've won $5 million in grants over the last 2 years as we're transforming Nasoni from a hardware company to a software development technology company.
That's really interesting. And I can definitely see the use cases for both those with medical challenges, but even those of us who aren't so graceful at washing their face in the sink and could probably use something like that as to not get water everywhere every night.
That is a big challenge, right? Because we're doing a ton of customer interviews so that we understand our customer. The focus of my TED Talk is start with who, not why. And countering Simon Sinek's argument, right? And in that talk, we talk about understanding your customer better than anyone else. One of the things we've heard is splashing is an issue. Customers don't like spinal cord injured customer and so forth. They don't like splashing in the sink. So to help offset that, we're creating things like laminar flow and so forth. But it's a big focus for ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on this just a little bit, but what are some of the biggest challenges you've encountered as a startup founder thus far, and how did you overcome them or are working with them right now?
So in starting Nasoni over the last, 8 or 9 years that I've been doing this, I have learned so many things. I've done many things wrong and many things right. And everybody was telling me, Steve, you need to write a book. So last year I actually did. This is the book. It's called Valuepreneurs. And the foreword is written by Chris Hively. You may know Chris. Chris actually is the co-founder of MapQuest. And anyway, Chris wrote the foreword for the book. The book has won 21 awards since January when it launched. But again, in it, all the things I learned right and wrong are in the book, the lessons I've learned, and they're in what I call the value-driven product development process that's in the book. But for example, patenting. I filed a patent too soon. I didn't understand when you needed to patent a product, right? So the lesson learned is, in the process, you don't patent until you finish your MVP design, right? So, but also in the book, we teach that prior to the MVP, when you're in the concept development stage, there's a timing that you file your provisional patent. And you have to make a decision. That decision is, do I have the skills to continue on and take this product to market and be successful? Or am I better off licensing it to someone else? And so that's some of the things we teach in the book. But all those lessons learned are in the book.
That's really good to know, especially around, figuring out what's the right timing of things. I think that's so important in the startup world for sure. Uh, and again, you touched on this slightly, but let's dive a little bit deeper into what kind of like mentors or role models or anyone who's really inspired you along the way, who's been there helping you build your business.
Well, yeah, I got to give it credit to my wife, my wife, Becky Reed.
I'd be very upset if you didn't.
Well, as the CEO of Reed Integration, she always thought things didn't have to be the way they were for the companies that she had worked in. she felt like, employees are stakeholders, right? And there's this whole new revolution on stakeholders in the company. When you think about employees in the 1970s, employees were moved, as we talked about in the RIoT Accelerator, right? They were moved from an asset category to a liability category. And as a result, many of the employees' jobs were shipped overseas. And it's decimated areas of the country in the US. And employees were disillusioned and that sort of thing. So there's this revolution of making it different. And Becky has done that. She has created a different environment. When COVID hit and a third of her training was just of her business was canceled because nobody was doing in-person training right then,
Mhm.
which her government clients had done a lot of, she'd done a lot of with. And she took the hit personally on her salary and things like that so that she didn't have to lay people off, and employees really appreciated all that she's done, and things like that are incredible. I've learned a lot from her on those. Also in the accounting side, because I hate accounting. I'm not that kind of guy that can wear a visor, right? And just sit through that, but she is.
That's awesome. Um, well, final question is, what advice would you give to future startup founders or entrepreneurs based on your experiences?
I guess the best advice I can give is if you have a product and you're a product-based business, grab a copy of Valuepreneurs because I spent a lot of time putting everything I've learned into that book. It'd be hard to cover it all, right, in this talk. And so, I start with who. I would also say that. You can find my TED Talk. It's a TEDx talk with TEDx Warrington, and it's called Start with Who, Not Why. Again, countering Simon Sinek. And there's a reason for that. And I talk about that. And there's a phrase I close with in the TED Talk. It's called let who inspire you, the process guide you, and impact define you. That's the essence of what it means to be a valuepreneur. And so dig into that because I promise you, if you're a product-based entrepreneur, you'll definitely benefit from that.
Well, that's really inspiring. And that's all the questions that we have for today. Thank you so very much for sharing your story with us. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Awesome, Jen. Thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to the RIoT Accelerator and what we're going to get out of it.
Awesome. See you later. Bye.
All right, take care.